Welcome back to the Aubergine Chef. Today we're going to be making Black Forest cake. This is a recipe that I got a ton of requests for all the way since December, and even when I was doing the cupcake decorating for Noakesville Day a couple weeks ago, I had a couple people come in and ask me if I had a Black Forest cake recipe on my website. So I've been putting it off to do it just because I wanted to make sure to do it when cherries were in season. I could get fresh cherries, so that way it's a little bit more special. Now, to make a Black Forest cake, this requires three main components, I guess you can call them. Is a chocolate cake, whipped cream icing, and then a cherry filling. Now, of those, you can feel free to use any kind of chocolate cake you like. That's your favorite. I don't think that there's a specific chocolate cake recipe that is that lends itself to Black Forest cake more than any other chocolate cakes. So use your favorite. The whipped cream icing, that's pretty basic chantilly cream, so there's nothing too special there. And the cherry filling, I have a pretty basic recipe as well. You can garnish the top with the cherry filling or with maraschino cherries, however you like, and I'll go into that a little bit more. But for Black Forest cake connoisseurs or Black Forest torte connoisseurs, there is one ingredient that they agree that has to be in a Black Forest cake in order to make it a Black Forest cake, and that's Kirschwasser, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing incorrectly, but it's a liquor that is made from dark sweet cherries. And so what we're going to do to incorporate into the cake is we're going to use it to flavor the simple syrup that we use to soak the cake. You can also put a little bit in the chantilly cream. Don't put too much because if you put too much alcohol in chantilly cream, it can break. And you can also put it in the filling. Just make sure that you put it in the filling towards the end, so that way it doesn't cook out, and then you don't have the flavor in at all. But we're going to go ahead and start. I'm going to use Devil's Food chocolate cake recipe because that's my favorite recipe to do. It's pretty easy for me to make, and I usually have all the ingredients on hand. So there's not a lot of shopping that I have to do for this recipe. So for the Devil's Food chocolate cake, the first thing you want to do is whip together 3 egg whites with 5 ounces of granulated sugar to make a cold or French meringue. And if you don't know how to separate your eggs, you can click the button on your screen. And if you don't know how to make a French meringue, you can click the other button on your screen. And they'll take you over to the reference videos that I have. And you can pop over there, watch the video real quick, and then pop back over. And you want to go ahead and do that first, scrape it out of your bowl and set it aside. Now normally you do want to do the meringue last, so that way you're not losing aerosols and it's not setting up. But I always do it first because it reduces the time that I need to wash dishes and how many times I need to wash the bowl. So however you want to do it is fine. I haven't really found any huge drastic difference as long as I'm using it pretty soon after I make it. The next thing you want to do is on your mixer, you want to take 4 ounces of shortening and beat it with a paddle attachment until it's, soft and not just one big lump. Then we're going to add to that 6.5 ounces of granulated sugar, but we also want to measure out 11.5 ounces of all-purpose flour, 1.5 ounces of unsweetened cocoa powder, 1/4 ounce of baking soda, 1/4 ounce of salt, and 1/4 ounce of salt. And then you want to go ahead and sift that all together. And what that does, especially for this recipe, is it breaks up those lumps of cocoa powder, and it also helps aerate and mix your ingredients. But you should always sift your ingredients together. You should always shift your flour and your dry ingredients together, so that way you can mix and get rid of those lumps. Of those 3 eggs that you separated, you want to keep the 3 yolks. You also want to weigh out 10.5 ounces of cold water. And we also want to have a little bit of vanilla extract, which we're going to add in next. So the first thing you want to do is, after you beat your shortening, is you want to combine your 6.5 ounces of granulated sugar and just a teaspoon or so of vanilla extract. Okay, so after you've beaten your sugar, your vanilla, your 6.5 ounces of sugar, your vanilla, and your shortening together, it should look pretty light and fluffy. We're going to go ahead and add in 1 yolk at a time. And we're going to scrape in between each addition as needed, or right at the end after we get them all incorporated. Now when you're incorporating your egg yolks, you don't want to wait until they're completely incorporated before you add the next one. Okay, so once you've scraped on the sides of your bowl after adding all your yolks, go ahead and add in about 1/2 of your dry ingredients, 1/3 to 1/2, depending on how much your mixer can handle. And we're going to go incorporate that on low speed. Alright, once that's slightly incorporated, go in and add in 1/3 to 1/2 of your water. Okay, add the remaining dry ingredients, and then the remaining water. Go ahead and beat that together for about a minute or two. Okay, remove your bowl from the mixer, scrape on the sides to make sure there's no chunks hiding anywhere, including on the bottom. And then you want to go ahead and incorporate your egg white meringue. And to do that, we're going to add it about 1/3 at a time. And then we're going to fold it in. Okay, then we're going to add another 1/3. And the reason that we do it in parts is because each time we add an addition of the meringue to the heavy batter, it loses some of those air cells. So like the first one we folded in would lose a lot of air cells, but we're also lightening it. So the second batch of meringue that we fold in loses fewer and fewer air cells. And you always want to add your next addition before you see your batter become streak-free. Okay, if you haven't done so already, you want to prepare 2 9-inch cake pans by spraying them with pan release and then putting a small parchment paper square in the center. You don't have to put it all the way to the edge with a full parchment paper circle. And then you're just going to pour half the batter, or until the batter is about, I would say about halfway up the pan. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and bake this in a 350-degree oven for about 40 minutes or so. We're going to check it at 25 minutes to make sure it doesn't get overbaked. And the way to test if it's done is to insert a knife or a toothpick into the center of the cake, pull out the knife or the toothpick, and check if it has crumbs or batter clinging to it. If it comes out clean, it's done. If it comes out dirty, then it needs to stay in for a little bit longer, usually about 5 to 10 minutes or so. You just have to judge it depending on how much stuff comes back off the toothpick. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and go in the oven on the middle rack. Alright, so while our cake is baking, we can go ahead and make the cherry filling because that needs to cool down anyway. So we're going to use fresh cherries, and if you don't know how to pit a cherry, honestly I use a little tool for this because I don't cut cherries all that often, and this is just really quick. It's a little tool, it's actually OXO brand. I seem to use it, get their stuff a lot. You just put it in where the stem is, it closes down like that, and if you push through, the pit comes right out. So it's really, really handy. It's really fast to do lots of cherries, and it kind of maintains the shape, although you do want to cut the cherries in half. Okay, so in this pot, I have 4 ounces of cherry juice, and I'm just using unsweetened cherry juice. You can find this in your grocery store. Whole Foods usually carries that brand. I really like that brand. They also have a blueberry juice that's just the same way. It's unsweetened, but you can always add simple syrup to make it sweet. And we're going to add 4 ounces of granulated sugar to this pot as well. And if you're using sweetened cherry juice, like Ocean Spray I think has sweetened cherry juice, you want to reduce that sugar so that way it's not overwhelming. I don't know about how much, because it just depends by taste, but I would say at least by half, if not by 3/4. Okay, and then to this pot, we're going to add 5 ounces of pitted cherries cut in half. Okay, once you've got your cherries in there, give it a good mix with your whisk. Make sure there's no sugar sticking to the bottom. And then we want to go ahead and bring this to the stove and warm it up and bring it to a simmer. And we're going to let it simmer for about 3 to 5 minutes or so, just until the cherries that are inside the pot are nice and soft. In the meantime, you want to weigh out 5 ounces again of the cherries cut in half. And the reason we're doing this is because we want there to be some texture in our cherry filling. Now, if we were just to put them all in that pot, they would be very soft and very, it'd be more like a cherry reduction. Now, that's up to you. If you want to have your cherries that soft, feel free to do it that way, but this will give them a little bit of a bite, a little bit of a character. Okay, you also want to weigh out 3/8 of an ounce of cornstarch with 1 ounce of granulated sugar, and you just want to mix that together. And what that does is the sugar helps break up that cornstarch. So when we add the 1 ounce of cherry juice to it, it doesn't clump up too much. Helps break it up. Now, if you forget to add the sugar or forget to mix it in, it's not a huge deal. Just go ahead and just keep mixing it until it comes together. And you always want to use cold liquid when you're mixing with your cornstarch, so that way it doesn't start to set up. You want to go ahead and increase the heat and bring it to a boil. Give your cornstarch mixture another good stir, because sometimes the cornstarch can settle at the bottom. Then add that right to your filling. Make sure to get all that cornstarch off the bottom if you can. Whisk that in, and then bring it to a boil. A gentle boil over like medium heat. Okay, and what we're doing is we're cooking that cornstarch. We're making it, we're allowing it to get to its thickening stages, so we have to bring heat to that, we have to bring it to a boil. But we also have to cook it for about 1 to 3 minutes to cook up that cornstarch flavor. It's got that starchy flavor, kind of like eating raw flour. So you want to make sure to boil it for a good 1 to 3 minutes, but you always want to keep it moving because you don't want to accidentally burn any other components in your pot. So you can see it's already getting kind of thick. And as it cools, it'll get thicker too. It's kind of like gravy. Okay, in your pot, now you can see that all that whisking really just mashed up those cherries, so you can see how soft it gets. So that's what we're going to add in the remaining 5 ounces of fresh cherries, and we're just going to whisk that in. Now it has a nice bright red color now. I mean, probably can't tell super well on that camera, But because the cherries are nice and red, they're nice and red, but they're also dark sweet cherries, so they're going to get darker over time. And so was that cherry juice. That was a black cherry juice, actually. So what we're going to do is we're going to add this, pour it all into a separate bowl. Okay, and we're going to allow it to cool completely in the refrigerator. Okay, so after your cakes have cooled down completely, you want to remove them from the cake pans and then trim off the tops. And then you want to make your chantilly cream, which is just 1 pound, 8 ounces of heavy cream with 1.5 ounces of powdered sugar and just a teaspoon or 2 of vanilla extract. It's up to you how much you want to do. And then you whip it up to about medium peaks, which is about this kind of texture that you see here. All right, you also want to make a simple syrup, which I do have a video on making that. With this simple syrup, I went ahead and added I combined 4 ounces of simple syrup with 3 ounces of the kirsch. So that's pretty heavy. It's a lot of kirsch. Normally you probably only want to put 1 ounce or so in it, but I want to make sure there's a very pronounced flavor. Now you want to be building on a 9-inch cake board. I'm actually out of 9-inch cake boards. I don't know what happened. This is actually an 8-inch, so it's a little bit too small. So I'm going to work on my 10-inch cake board. So why you want to work on a 9-inch cake board is because the cake shrinks a little bit, and using a 9-inch cake board gives you the perfect idea of how much icing is going to be on the cake. Because what you want to do is you want to ice the entire cake board, including the cake. So that way, so you see like how this one sticks out a little bit. If we were to cover this with icing, you'd have like a 1/2 inch or so of icing. With the 9-inch cake board, it's more like 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch. So it's really perfect. So we're just going to have to eyeball it this time around. I'm sorry that I don't have the 9-inch cake boards. I'm completely out. I don't know what happened. So I'll have to buy some eventually. But in the meantime, we can totally eyeball it. So the first thing you want to do is take your simple syrup and soak your cake. This adds flavor, sweetness, and a little bit of moisture, so that way it's a nice moist cake. All right, and since we're putting cherry filling in the middle of this cake, we want to pipe a ring of icing, which is basically our chantilly cream this time. And you don't have to use a star tip, but I'm going to use a star tip later, so just to conserve bags and time, I'm just going to use the star tip. So what we're going to do, instead of just putting the filling right in the middle because they just won't hold together, what we're going to do is we're going to use some chantilly cream, and we're going to pipe it in a spiral, and that's going to help control the filling so that way it's not going all over the place when we put the next layer on. Okay, so you just want to put your filling on next. Make sure it's big enough that those cherries can come through. Okay, and that should be half of your cherry filling. So take your next layer and place that right on top, and soak this with the remaining simple syrup. Topped off in simple syrup, your last layer, you want to make sure that there are no crumbs anywhere on your table or on your cake, on your turntable, because any crumbs can get into your icing. We're going to go ahead and ice this cake. We just want a thin layer on top because we're going to use the rest of the filling on top as well. This is going to help make it a little bit brighter and just a little bit more stable as well since the filling is so loose. Let's just work the icing all the way to the edges. Alright, and then to do the sides, what you need to do is take some icing on your spatula and press it right up against your side. You're not trying to be perfect here, you're just trying to get it onto the sides. So just glob it on. Remember, if you're using a 9-inch cake board, you want to cover that completely too. But we're going to eyeball it since we're using our gold board. Okay, next thing you want to do is take your bench scraper and hold it. Now again, if you were using a 9-inch cake board, what you would do is hold it literally like right against the cardboard, so that way you're kind of making the corrugated part show through, but it's still at the same thickness of the cardboard. But again, since we're using the cake gold board and not the cardboard, we're going to have to eyeball it. So I'm going to put it on top of the cardboard, hold it away from the cake just a little bit, just an estimate, and we're just going to smooth out the icing, holding it perpendicular to the cake board. Okay, we don't have to be super perfect on the sides either because we're going to cover that with some chocolate. But we do want to get this ring off the top of our cake. So to get rid of it, we just take our spatula and push it into the center. Okay, you just want to pipe a shell border now. And so make a shell border. You're just going to take your 823 or 825 star tip. I'm using the Teco brand, by the way. And you want to squeeze a little bit, allow it to build up on itself, and then pull back. It's not really a nice shell, but you can see my whipped cream is a little bit on the stiff side, so it's kind of not making those smooth peaks that we're looking for. So you can see how easy it is to push it from soft to medium to stiff. That's okay. It'll work. All right, next we're just going to scoop the remaining cherry filling on top. Now this is where you could use maraschino cherries if you wanted to have a nice bright topping, but this works just as fine. Just use a spoon and gently push it to the edges of the chantilly cream shell border without messing up the chantilly underneath. Yeah, this peeler works a little bit better. So if you want to get some nicer pieces, take your vegetable peeler and just shave your chocolate just like if you were peeling a potato. Take your finished cake, or not your chocolate curls, but your chocolate shavings. Take some in your palm and just press it into the side of your cake, allowing the rest of it to fall down. Now again, you would want to do this before you put it on the gold board, so that way you can get it right next to your cake. Alright, and when you're finished with all the chocolate shavings, this is pretty much what you'll have as your finished product. Alright, so that's how you make the Black Forest cake. I hope you learned a lot today. Thank you for watching, and remember, the Aubergine chef demystifying dessert one recipe at a time.